We're back.
We are back. We're back for another episode.
Now, is it 5? Is it 5th or 4th?
Oh, is it 5th?
One on our own, Jamie, Amanda, 2. Yeah, this is 5.
5. It's 5. It feels like we've been doing it all our lives, Jill.
All our lives. I mean, literally, probably feels the same to anyone who's actually listened to them. My husband, on a walk today, admitted he's not listened to any of them, Ben.
I mean, I'm not surprised. He lives with you, first of all, and usually it's probably, and he's probably sick of you going, I've got to go on a Zoom call with Ben for a meeting, or I've got to go on a Zoom call with Ben for a podcast, or for a disco.
I have forgiven him because he then tweeted about today's topic of the week, and he's got some good responses for us, hasn't he?
He has. He's got some fantastic responses for our topic of the week, which we will come on to.
Topic of the week, Don't ever think you will get away with saying topic of the week without me saying topic of the week.
I mean, you say this, Jill, but our guest last week, after our podcast, was also clearly sick of your performance of our topic of the week jingle, and actually wrote her own on the keyboard and sent it through.
She did, yes, but are we playing it?
No, because
because mine is better.
Because I might have to edit it in. We'll edit it in somewhere.
Right.
I mean, you can still sing it if you want, Jill.
Let the listeners decide. That's what I say.
They're probably like, we just don't care. Just talk about the topic. Doesn't bother about the jingle. Anyway, before we do talk about that,
yes,
the T of the W.
Yeah. I like that.
Yeah, I know, it's good, isn't it? But how have you been, Jill? It was last week now was half term. We're obviously filming this right at the end of half term.
Yeah.
How has your half term been?
It's actually nice.
Yeah.
A little bit of extra sleeping, extra walking, extra eating, extra drinking, all of the extras. And I mean, let's just mention it now. What a good kitchen disco we did have.
I was about to say we had, so last time we talked about the idea of doing a kitchen disco, and we actually we hosted one, didn't we? Jill had an amazing playlist sorted, and we had a although I wasn't in my kitchen, I had to be in my office.
You didn't you? You tried every room in your house. I'm surprised we didn't end up in your toilet.
I mean, that's a whole different video. But yes.
We'll talk about that in a second.
But no, we had a whole kitchen disco. Lots of people, really good fun, wasn't it? Hour of just dancing, singing along, and
occasionally I edited the tunes. I felt like some of them were going on too long. I don't know if you noticed.
I did notice. I
said a little bit of DJing.
I did say, I was like, one of the numbers, I was like, oh, this one goes on for a long time, and there was a smooth transition. I was like, oh, that was beautiful. Beautiful transition.
What did you think of C'est La Vie, the Bewitched, I think they were called, song? C'est La Vie. And it's got a bit of river dance in the middle of it.
Did you see my river dancing? I did river dancing.
I did river dance as well, but I'm just not sure it should stay in my playlist, Ben. It's not quite up to scratch, I don't think.
It reminds me, when that number comes on, it reminds me, I don't know if you ever watched that the Peter Kay show, the one that was... Britain's Got the Pop Factor and possibly a new Jesus Christ Superstar, Superstar Strictly on Ice. I don't know how I still remember that title. I mean, that was impressive. But we
haven't planned any of this.
I know. I literally still remember it. But he in one of his medleys as his character Geraldine, that was one of the songs, and he went into a river dance. And that's, I think, and when that happened, I was like, I remember that.
Yeah. I can't pick that out. But other than that, I thought, very strong cha-cha slide. Apparently Jenny, who was a guest last week, pulled something whilst cha-cha sliding.
Well, she is a bit filthy. Oh, you mean like a muscle? Okay.
Muscle. Yeah, it wasn't that kind of disco. Although I did clean my toilet just in case.
In case someone came round?
No, just in case I drank too much and had to be sick in it.
No one wants to be sick in a dirty toilet.
And... although I cleaned my kitchen, although actually probably what I should have done was put like alcohol on the floor to make it sticky, because that's the best kind of disco.
So you're trying to pull your shoes off the floor. Yeah, no, it was genuinely, I was sort of a bit like, oh, I wonder how this is going to work. I think it'll be fun, but I wonder what it's going to be like. I genuinely felt like I was on a night out. It made me miss not being with people though, but it was just nice just dancing along, seeing other people dance along and just having fun. It was,
and also you didn't have to get a taxi home at the end.
Didn't have to get a taxi home. Didn't have to worry about that. Just start drinking and carry on.
Yes.
But
obviously not encouraging anyone to drink on Friday night.
especially not any of the kids,
Yeah.
but who were in the call as well. But no, but again, linking back to our topic of the week last week, it's, you know, it was just a nice thing to do with the group. Again, we said about during this lockdown, it's about doing things with keeping that sense of community is more important than putting on a show or putting on.
And it was also the thing we mentioned about Banbury itself being one of the only towns that all the drama groups come together, because we actually had people from a lot of different drama groups on the call, didn't we? Including my lovely cousin Liz, who lives just outside Paris, joined us for the call, and she dressed up in proper Mamma Mia gear and everything.
I was going to say she definitely won the prize for best outfit. Yeah. For sure. I mean, I could have sorry for our listeners, those who are watching the video, I could have wore this. I don't know if you saw this on my Facebook yesterday, Jill.
Yeah, no, that's a nice,
sort of like
nice look.
Crazy grey hair, nutty professor.
Yeah, very strong.
Yeah, this was for my filming for something for my school for year 7. But I could have wore that.
We just done filming for Sims year 2.
Oh,
I won't talk about it because it will spoil the mystery for his school. I'm not sure anyone from year 2 will be listening to our podcast, but he was like, would you help? And of course, my family and me, being as we are slightly amateur dramatics minded, were like, yes. And my Ben was going, I'll edit it together. Katie was on the camera. We all had multiple characters. It was great.
So it basically became like Crowther Productions.
Crowther Productions, thank you very much. Yeah. And I had one line in it,
right,
which was this line, is it my wine? Like that. And we now think there could be a whole series called Is It My Wine? Is
It My Wine?
Yeah.
What would the series consist of?
Every time there's a knock at the door, me shouting out, is it my wine? And it not being my wine.
I mean, I feel the concept might run thin
Perhaps
quite
a
quickly.
little bit weak, yes.
I can't imagine it being like celebrating its 100th episode. Is it her wine? I can tell you now it won't be.
No.
No.
Good.
But,
so, here we go. Should we talk about T of the W?
Let's talk about our topic of the week.
Topic of the week.
Very good, very good. So I'm really looking forward to this one actually, mainly because I've got some fun stories myself. But our topic of the week this week was to tell us your funniest, craziest, or most shocking story about on-stage mistakes. So we were looking for any of the things that happen, you know, because it's show business, where the show must go on, where something has just gone a little bit wrong. Either in a comedic way or in a slightly scary way. Obviously, nothing that's going to I was permanently damaged or anything, but just sort of little stories that at the time usually are a bit terrifying, but when afterwards you can have a good laugh about them. So we've and interestingly, Jill, I thought this was interesting. I've been involved in a lot of groups. I know a lot of people in this area who do amateur dramatics. And I was very interested that this is the topic of the week that we've had the least response to. And I don't know if it's because people are embarrassed. But don't worry if you are embarrassed. I remember a lot of the stories and I'll call you out anyway.
We're going to talk about them. We are going to talk about them, oh yes. But as I mentioned, my other half has a bit of a Twitter following. He's in education, and the education Twitter sphere has gone mad for it, Ben. They've literally been posting in their tens.
More than we've had, to be fair.
More than we've had, yes. And if I may kick off, perhaps, with one from the Twitter sphere. I don't know whether the person wants their name mentioned, but this was from someone called Una Kelleher, which is a great name. And she said, during a nativity, Joseph, in speech marks, i.e. the character, went for a wee on the stage. Our caretaker at the time donned a tea towel and came onto the stage singing with his mop. It was brilliant and hilarious at the same time. How good is that?
I mean, for a couple of reasons. One, just one of those things that you go, oh my God, could you imagine me sat in the audience? But also, shout out to the caretakers and the cleaners and everyone who runs not just schools, but venues who are just brilliant and invaluable. But shout out to them.
Yeah,
Um,
that kind of spontaneous sorting it out whilst carrying on the show is something we've done a lot of ourselves, isn't it, Ben?
we have, and we will definitely be coming on to our own stories shortly, I think. Have you got another one, Jill? And
I have another one from the Twitter sphere. Someone called Stacey Banks. Once had my mic turned on whilst in the loo during a technical rehearsal.
Oh, yes. Now, you see, Mike staying on is about... Can I give you a couple of things here? First of all, just a reminder to all actors and performers that when you have your mic on, obviously, there's always the issue that someone might accidentally turn you up. I mean,
that kind of podcast.
Not that, I mean, it's going that way. There may be that issue, but also just a reminder that you're essentially wearing like a bug, and if with the headset on, a sound person can randomly just turn you up and listen in their ear. So never moan or complain about the tech crew. Never moan or complain about the sound person, because they might be listening to you.
Yes.
Never talk about any secrets you're having. Never do that. Just a worth reminder, because I don't think people realise that they can literally just be heard.
Ben, are you going to do that story about the other person whose mic was on when they came off stage? Come on.
When I was at school, when I was a student, we were doing a performance, and we were doing a performance to, it was like a dress rehearsal to primary school. And like all the, I think it was year 5s and 6s from almost every local primary school there, it was packed. And the main character, I'm trying not to give too much away in terms of what the show was or who it was.
I'm not going to say it.
No. The main character finished his sort of little scene, and he walked into the wings where one of the cast members had randomly decided to lie down in the pitch black wings. And so the lead walked off and tripped over him and said, "What the," and then used the F word. And his mic was still on. And it broadcast to all the kids in the auditorium. And from backstage, you could just hear a collective gasp. And I mean, yeah. So again, make sure.
Yeah, be very careful.
Be very careful. Give the sound person a second to just turn that slider down for you.
Yeah. And that can happen. And people have to, because they get injured as well, don't they? You can get actually injured whilst things go wrong on stage.
Well, I think
we've had several people come off stage with nasty bruises and the like. I think I once posted on Facebook, it's not a St John's, this is when we were called St John's Drum, it's not a St John's show unless I'm at home with cuts and grazes on my knees and a big glass of wine in my hand.
Have I told you about like the worst injury that I've ever had with that, and it was at St John's, and it was a long-lasting injury? Have I ever told you it?
I know that you have.
So you know when we did Cinderella?
We did do Cinderella.
And we were the Ugly Sisters.
We were the Ugly Sisters, yes. Mm-hmm.
I
mean, I think the viewers a collective gasp at that because we're so beautiful.
Yeah. I mean, it was also when you got lots of questions going, is it really a match?
Come on, Ben, you didn't need to do that.
Is that one a man or is it? Oh, well, no, it's Jill. You just played it so well. But at the end of the final show, I don't know if you remember at the end of Cinderella, after seeing Cinderella and Prince together, my character fainted. Yeah. Anyway, on the last night, I fainted and I sort of went down quite hard and my sort of leg crushed into my foot quite badly.
I wondered what you were going to say then.
No, into my foot. And I remember...
How the man who ended up with the 100-ton testicle, that's how it all started then.
It was in a dress and in Cinderella. No, my other leg came down onto my foot quite hard. And I remember feeling this most agonising pain in my toe. And for about 2 years afterwards, I was afflicted with it. And essentially what had happened was I had forced my toenail into my toe, right? And it used to cause me major pain. And I had to have surgery to have it removed a few years ago, to have the nail removed because it was, but yeah, that was an onstage accident, not a fun one. I've got another story about an onstage accident that was posted to us. It's a great long story. I'm not going to read it all, but definitely have a look on our Treading the Boards comments on this one to read the whole story. So this is from George. And he said, who I went to university with. And he said, when I was doing Funny Money in 3rd year of uni, night 1, I go on to do my first scene. All is fine when I go to pour a drink mid-scene. I suddenly noticed the back of my thumb is pouring blood. So I had to power through the rest of the scene, trying desperately not to make it obvious that I was freaking out. Thankfully, I had a tissue in my pocket ready for a later scene. So I just used that to wipe up the blood and ran to get a plaster the second I got off stage. To this day, I haven't a clue how it happened. Because there was nothing broken, no razor blades, he said in his jacket. I mean, that is bad. That is bad when you injure yourself and you sort of think, because I think you do go through a moment of, should I be stopping or carrying on or what?
Yeah. Well, I'm sure we will discuss a lot of bodycut youth stories when our guest Mandy joins us in just a few minutes. But I must share one where one of our lead characters in a show 5 years ago came off after his first scene of one of the performances, felt sick, got sick. I had to go on from the wings as him, so whipped the jacket off his prone body being sick and put a moustache on, and out I went.
What show was this?
That was Secret Code.
I was there, wasn't I?
Yeah.
Because I was helping backstage because I choreographed it, hadn't I?
That's right.
Right. I do remember that. God, there's so many stories. I was thinking we've been involved in so much, Jill. There must be so many stories that we can't remember. But I've forgotten about that. But that's cracking.
And then someone said, I think it was Stuart from Puritans Radio, said to me, "Oh, the last time I saw you, you were on stage playing a German." I was like, "No, I don't think I was. I don't remember that." And then about a week later, I suddenly went, "Oh yeah, I did go on, didn't I?" I went on in that scene. So there we go.
The George also shared another story that I'll share with you. No medical emergencies in this one, but basically they were doing a play and it had to involve some sort of sight gag where they had to lift a blanket and hide a briefcase, and they'd rehearsed it perfectly every single time. And during the show, his hands somehow slip and he sucker punched the other actor right in the eye. And he said, fair play to him for carrying on like nothing had happened, despite the fact you could see his eye visibly getting watery.
Brilliant.
And that actor then couldn't leave the stage for another 45 minutes.
Fantastic.
I mean, to be fair, I've had similar. I was my first show with Bamboo Operatic Society. I was only young, and my character had to whisper something in one of the other cast members' ears, obviously something a bit rude, and get slapped. And it was decided that the fake slap just wasn't looking real, so she would actually slap me. And it used to hurt a bit, but we were like, okay, it's fine. And we always had we always had a signal that as long as I was okay, what I would do is I would hold the cheek and sort of look at her, shocked. That would be my signal of it's fine, I'm okay, because she always felt guilty. Anyway, on one night, she absolutely walloped me, and my jaw literally went, right? It was, and the audience literally went, and then laughed. And I was so stunned and thrown that I forgot to do my little signal. So she's walking off stage going and trying to look back at me to check I'm okay. And my jaw has clicked ever since. I can click my jaw.
Oh, Ben, your injuries, hey?
I know.
Anyway,
I suffer from my arm.
Is it time for us to welcome our guest?
Oh, it's definitely.
We tell all the best stories before she even joins us.
Oh, Jill, the joke is, I've not even told my best stories yet. They are to come. Most of them aren't any more injuries or anything. They're more just hilarious. But yes, we're going to welcome our guest, who I'm sure has her own stories and who we're delighted to have with us. In fact, Jill, do you want to introduce her? Because I realised I introduced them all. You introduced them.
No, this is our wonderful guest from Bodycut Church Youth Drama Group, the longest serving leader there, Mandy Cox, joining us. Yay, Mandy!
Hello, Mandy.
Hi.
How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Very, very good. We are having a good laugh talking about our topic of the week, which we're going to get you...
Topic of the week.
Oh, dear. Which we're going to get you involved in a moment with some of your stories. I know you've got some great stories for us, and we've got some stories we want to share with you. But first, tell us about your sort of experience in terms of drama and treading the boards.
That's the title of the podcast, man.
Treading the boards, indeed. Yeah, I like the fact that you brought that in. My first experience of drama was at secondary school, when I was in my early teens, and I was part of a production of Oliver that we performed at the what was called the Technical College in the old days, Banbury College. So in a big theatre. And when I think back now, what I remember most about that production wasn't being on stage, because I can't really remember what I did on stage at all. Probably very little, because I wasn't very good. But what I really remember was being in the dressing rooms and having the makeup on and seeing the scenery backstage. And at Banbury College, you go downstairs, and the dressing rooms are downstairs behind the stage, or used to be. It might not be like it now. But it was just that buzz, that absolute theatre buzz that I really loved. And reflecting on that now, that's probably why I do what I do, rather than tread the boards myself, because that's the bit that I find is so rewarding. And I love that almost smell of the grease paint, you know that? I know it's not grease paint anymore, was in those days, a very long time ago. But yeah, it's that kind of, it's that side of drama that,
I mean,
that I absolutely love.
also, Mandy, your artistic skills come to the fore, don't they? Some of the things you've painted for us as sets for body kit, and then when you do makeup and things for people going on stage, is absolutely amazing. And did you do art? Did you do art at school and things?
I did art at school, wanted to go to art college. Mum and Dad said, no, that's not a proper job. Go and do something proper, which I then sort of did and failed at and flunked. I should have just gone to art college. That would have been the thing to do.
Yes, it's very impressive, your artwork. I remember taking photos for your production of Spamalot, and you had drawn all this sort of Monty Python style stuff all over the wings. And I remember taking loads of photos of those, because I was like, this is brilliant. Show hadn't even started.
And I really enjoyed it.
It was fantastic. So tell us, obviously you say you don't necessarily tread the boards yourself, but you obviously do things behind the scenes and as production team member. So tell us a bit about Bodykit Youth. Who are they, and when did you get involved, and how did you get involved?
I got involved probably 26 years ago, when my eldest daughter joined the group, and I was one of those mums who said, anything I can do to help? And oh, of course there was something I could do to help. As you well know, there's always something somebody can do to help. So I got involved with the makeup, which I really enjoyed, for probably a couple of years. And then somehow I had my arm twisted to become a leader, and I became a leader about 24 years ago. Both my daughters went through the group. One of them came back to be a leader. They both help out a little bit when they can now, but they're both in their 30s, so you can tell how old I am and how long ago that was. But yes, so they both went through the group, and I've been involved ever since, and I love it. And when the girls left, it didn't seem a reason for me to leave, because I actually love being involved with amateur theatre. But I do the backstage stuff. When I say backstage stuff, I direct, I do makeup, I do costumes, I'll do whatever needs doing. I think pretty much turn my hand to most things. Can't sing, I'm not musical, but other than that.
That's great. What obviously you say you've directed some productions. What have been some of your highlights of directing amateur productions?
There are so many.
It's a difficult question. I know when I got asked, there's loads, but
highlights of I wouldn't pick out a show particularly. It's just I love directing because I love to see the young people shine, and I like to see them, doing things they didn't think they could do. So actually giving them the confidence to get up there, tread the boards themselves, and do things they didn't believe they could do, but we believe they could do.
And Mandy, that's interesting, because one of the stories I wrote down for this week's topic of the week was weirdly not so much the fact that something went wrong, but the fact that last year in Spamalot, when our cast managed to ad-lib their way out of someone not appearing when they were supposed to appear in one of the shows, and that, as a director or involved in this, it's when you kind of go, yes. We've totally nailed that, because the kids were so assured of themselves and the characters that they were playing that it didn't matter that they had to make something up on the spot. It was a bit panto then, in a way. And they managed to come through it. And I know Mandy often sits in the front as our prompt, and her little face, I could see from, I was backstage, I could see her little face, and then they just carried on and managed to get through it. It was amazing.
But it is stuff like that, isn't it? You know, like you say, seeing people's faces, seeing them learn they can do something that they didn't expect, including just improvising their way out of a scene, which you can't. You can do improvisation games, but you can never prepare yourself for having to improvise in front of a live audience because something's gone wrong. You know, I think you're right. I always love. I think some of the most rewarding moments is when you get someone who didn't expect that they could do it, or the audience or the people didn't expect that they could achieve that, and all of a sudden they've gone, whoa, they've really, you know, you've taken a risk maybe on them or casting them, and then they really shone. That's sometimes the best moments, I think, for me.
Definitely.
Yeah. And also, you haven't been involved for a while as well, Mandy. You're probably a bit like me as well, seeing how much children develop between when we first get them into the groups and then when they leave us. That's always so amazing. I remember some of our very talented and people that take leads now, when they first came and auditioned, I think we had tears from some of them, didn't we? You know who I'm thinking of. First time they kind of blurt out a song or deliver a funny line in a good way, you're just like, yes, so good.
I remember a very long time ago, way back, I mean, you know, 15 years ago probably, a young lady who was part of the group who used to come in every Friday night and cry for an hour. Every Friday night she would cry. Anything that we asked her to do, she would cry. And she ended up playing Cosette in Les Mis, and she was incredible. And that's where she went from literally crying every Friday night to being incredible on stage.
But that's, you know, and that I think also, as well as showing sort of how good they clearly are, it shows that the atmosphere that they're in terms of it's a supportive one, you know, because let's be honest here, sometimes some groups sometimes don't necessarily have that environment. I'm lucky, I don't feel like I've ever been involved in one that has, but I know of stories. And when someone can get over that fear, because it's a valid fear to have, isn't it? It's stage fright, and it's a big deal to be able to get over that. It's about the environment they're in. So that's a credit to you and credit to the group, isn't it? To be able to support those people and get them to that stage where they can sing incredible a song or do an incredible performance in front of an audience. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about our topic of the week, because I know we've got loads of stories, and I imagine we could go on for hours if we don't. So Mandy, tell us one of your stories about something that has maybe gone wrong or a mistake. What is one of your highlights? We'll go through a few of them, don't worry. But what's
highlights or lowlights, depending on your point of view?
They kind of end up being both, don't they, sometimes? The longest one ago that I remember, which was when I was only doing makeup for the group, I wasn't actually part of the leadership team for the group, was the first time the group ever did Bugsy Malone. And Laura, my daughter, was one of the gangs in her, you know, trilby hat. And for some reason, somebody got something wrong somewhere. Somebody got their lines wrong, which inexplicably led into completely the wrong scene. And so they did completely the wrong scene in the first act, which was a scene from the second act, missing out a scene from the first act. And so we were like, I don't know who was prompting, but they must have been literally shaking in their seat, not knowing what to do, flicking through the pages. Yeah. So what they did was they stuck that scene they missed out, they just stuck it in at the beginning of the second act and hoped nobody would notice.
I mean, did it make sense? Nobody came back to life or anything, did they?
No, I don't think there was any. I don't think it was I don't think it was a Dallas moment with the shower, you know, like that.
Unsplurged, de-splurged. Is that right? Would it de-splurged?
De-splurged.
That sounds like maybe not. Interesting though. So on that topic of like hoping nobody would notice, it sort of leads into another one that I've got, is that we always say to the cast, don't worry, you know, don't worry about your lines. Learn your lines. We want you to say the lines right. And Jill will know, I'm the one who's always going, if you don't get your lines right, you miss half the show out because you shorten them. And that's what people, you know, they tend to shorten their lines, so they miss important bits. So it's really important you learn your lines. But what we drum into them, if they do fail and forget some of their lines and don't get them quite right on stage, that actually it's not the end of the world. Nobody knows the show off by heart. However, when the first time we did The Sound of Music, there was a man in the front row mouthing every word of the script. He wasn't a parent, so it wasn't like he'd been learning the lines with his children, but that was really disconcerting because we're like, what if we get this wrong? He's going to know. So that was a bit weird.
I did, when we did with Yobbos, we did Grease a few years ago, and Grease is a tricky one because people know Grease from the film, which is obviously very popular, but the musical is a bit different in terms of the order of things, and, you know, especially some of the songs, like some of the songs that come later in the film come much earlier in the musical. And in the interval, almost every show, I had like somebody being like, why have you moved the songs? And I'm like, well, I haven't. That's just how it is. Well, that's not how it is. It's like, well, the movie and the musical are different, and the musical came first. So I promise you it's right, but people get very, especially of the classics, they become very protective, don't they?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was. Yeah, especially things like Sound of Music, which is often a cult following, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Jill, have you got another story for us, or one that with your own?
I one from our St John's days, which was being on stage when the backdrop wire pinged and the backdrop fell behind us, and then we spent the interval trying to work out whether or not you could have a ball scene with the laundry pulled across, or which of the backdrops we could actually use.
I think
keep it as a town. We'll keep it as the town all the way through the second act.
I think because I remember like being, because I directed it and I was on stage. I remember being like, okay, we can get up to the interval. And then I was literally like, okay, on this act, you're going to change it to this one. And in this act, it would make sense to do it here. So it's fine. And actually, I think we just about got away with it. But when we checked, we have hung a lot of weight on that wire. Like, I'm surprised it didn't go earlier.
Well, it's that kind of thing, especially, Bodycut are the same. We use a school hall. And you do amends a lot of the time, don't you? This will be fine. We'll tack this extra bit of curtain on the bottom. Virginia, could you sew an extra bit of stuff here because this isn't the right size or whatever? And mostly, especially local groups like ours, nobody minds actually if it's not quite perfect. And obviously, when we've done things in the biggest Wickham Theatre, you do try and make it look a little bit more professional and try not to do it. But even there, Ben, things go wrong. Tell the story about the blackout.
Oh,
when the power went.
Well, this has happened to me twice in the performances. But I'll tell you both actually. But a few years ago, Banbury Operatic Society, we were in the middle of a sold-out production of Half a Sixpence. It was during a musical number. And I had sort of been brought in last minute to just do a few numbers because I couldn't commit to the whole process. So I wasn't in that number. It was one of the few that I wasn't in. So I was sort of backstage. And I was doing the backstage bit to, pick something up. And all of a sudden, for a few seconds, I didn't know what had happened, but it went into complete darkness backstage. I was like, what's going on? And the sound just suddenly stopped. I was like, I think I've died. It was like instantaneous, no sound, like all my senses have gone. And all of a sudden I was like, it's a power cut. And I was like, oh my God. So I somehow clawed my way, because it was just a pitch black room, to the corridor, and could sort of find my way to the stage door. And I knew that, and anyway, the cast just carried on. They were incredible. They literally just carried on with, luckily it wasn't a big intense dance routine, it was small movements. But one thing I knew, we built a walkway around the band, which was quite narrow. And I knew that the cast walked off along the walkway round, down some steps and out the side door of the auditorium. So I was there with my torch and a phone, just holding the door and beckoning them off. But what's lovely about that, and it's a funny story, and we had to pause the show, the stage manager
came in. Quite a long power cut. I think I was prompting that night because Katie was in it. And it was quite long, wasn't it? It wasn't one of those the power went off for 20 seconds. It was 20 minutes or...
It was a little while. So the stage manager came out and sort of said, we need to just pause the show. And obviously we're there going, will it come back on? Will we be able to redo the show? and luckily it did come back on and we could continue. But one thing that I love, and it links into my other story about a blackout moment, is just how supportive the audience was, because they knew, they're like, well, this obviously is nobody's fault. They knew it was a power cut because the band obviously also suddenly went, all the electrical, like plugged in instruments suddenly went, vroom. So they knew something was wrong. And like it got the biggest cheer and applause at the end because the cast had just continued. They didn't let it faze them. But that, and then typically it happened again to me when I was at university and the production I directed. We'd had a nightmare day. We had one day to move this show into this theatre. It was our final production. It had snowed all night long. It was some of the worst snow we'd ever had. We had to drag all this set like across the town, like by hand in the snow, because they were like, no, it's got to continue because we paid a lot of money for the theatre. So we got in, so that was a nightmare day. And then the last 5 minutes, the power went out. I think I'm cursed. The power went out again. We were in blackout, but what was really lovely, again, the audience who had loved the show throughout, had been laughing throughout. It was a comedy. They weren't just being rude. All of a sudden, like, they all had their torches on their phones out and just held their phones up. Like, nobody asked them to. They just did it. And it was really, like, not how you want a show to end, but in a way, it made it more special because it was such a lovely feeling. So I things like that, the fact that they were both resolved in the end and we could continue is a good thing, because I think otherwise I'd be talking about it very differently. But, you know, it actually does bring that, mistakes can sometimes bring that sense of community. It makes it special for the audience, doesn't it?
Yeah. They feel like they've definitely seen a one-off, don't they, when something's gone wrong on stage.
They love it. It gets sometimes the biggest laughs, the biggest cheers. Mandy, have you got another one for us?
Yeah, this is kind of an injury one. I've got some illness and injury ones, quite a few of those. So we were doing Annie, and we'd got to the Friday night show, and it was all going very well as Annie can go if you're not an Annie fan, as I know Jill isn't. No. And the person that was playing Daddy Warbuck's secretary, Grace, we were clearing up the hall after the performance. And she stepped over a chair awkwardly and dislocated her knee so badly that we had to call an ambulance. And I was kind of holding her as the paramedics were giving her gas and air because she was in so much pain, sort of sitting on the edge of the stage, trying not to notice how hot the paramedics were. Anyway, pass on that one. Whilst trying to comfort this poor girl, you know, we all agreed they were hot afterwards. Anyway, she couldn't perform anymore, but we still had 2 performances to do. And of course, this kind of brings up the thing about, well, do you understudy, don't you understudy? We don't at Bodycut, we don't understudy, mainly because when you're working with you know, a cast of entirely young people, getting somebody to understudy a big role and then them not getting the chance to do it is almost worse than having to fill in. Luckily, because Grace was a secretary, we managed to recast somebody and give them a clipboard with the lines on it, which was ideal because she just, every time she came on, she had a clipboard or a folder, so it worked for that actual part. Although we did have to get my daughter Laura, who was an adult by this time and not a member of the group, to step in and do one of the singing parts that the person who was playing Grace had been doing. So.
And I've already mentioned before you joined us, Mandy, that I came on as Thomas Allen.
Oh, that was one of mine.
Secret Code. So we've already done that one.
We've done that one. All I will say about that one is we didn't have to twist your arm, Jill.
Oh, God, no. Oh, no.
I'm pretty sure he pushed him.
He probably did.
He vomited. It wasn't a push. I think you're right.
Dear.
I poison his lunch, but no.
Yeah. She was there going, what allergies have you got? Nuts? Or have this peanut butter sandwich. So you talk about that production though, Mandy, of Annie. I came to watch that production. Okay, I remember. I think there was someone in it who I knew, and obviously this is before I knew you or got involved in sort of helping with Bodycut Youth. And I remember, didn't somebody in the audience have like a heart attack or something?
Yeah, I wasn't going to mention that one.
No, I'm still.
Yes.
We won't touch on it for long because it's definitely not an amusing story. But I remember being in the audience and sort of going, something's going on over there, and because the woman was on the phone. And
interestingly, we had one very cocky little cast member who thought it was hilarious to keep mentioning the Scottish play that year by name. I mean, I'm not superstitious, but you kind of wonder, don't you?
Me too.
It wasn't ideal. There was quite a lot that went wrong.
No, don't worry, we won't dwell on that one for too long in our fun, light-hearted podcast. But I do remember that happening and being like, "Cool, that's scary to deal with as a production, obviously, as well. Just knowing what to do when you've got kids on stage as well and during a scene. It's quite scary." Jill, have you got another one for us?
Well, I was just going to mention the way that I got introduced to Mandy, which was during a production of Beauty and the Beast. And they had hired, this is when Ben's first show, so he was, 8? They had hired the most amazing set of costumes I've ever seen. And, you know, the staging was brilliant. There were a lot of kids, and you got a lot of new kids in. And it absolutely tipped it down. Literally raining all day. I think it was the opening night, the Thursday night, and outside the classroom doors, that anyone who knows Bishop Loveley School knows, you have to exit through a classroom door to get round to the other side of the stage. It's literally the only way to do it is to go outside. So we had lots of umbrellas ready, but the biggest puddle in the world ever was forming outside the classroom door. To which I was on the list as a helping mum looking after the one of the classrooms, and so I got a broom and spent 3 or 4 hours sweeping water uphill. And after that, I think Mandy and Steph at the time went, "She's quite committed, isn't she? Shall we see if she wants to be a leader?"
She works hard.
Hard.
It's all right.
Your initiation to sweep water uphill, an impossible task.
And the costume survived, so all was good.
It works.
It did.
Can I tell you about some of mine then in terms of one show?
Been building up to these, Mandy. If they're not funny, then I think we have absolutely every reason to get like that. Then come on, you've literally been building up to them. Tell us.
So basically, a couple of years ago, I got to be in and also direct, although that wasn't the initial plan, but that's a whole other story, Priscilla, Queen of the Desert, which is obviously an amazing show, a massive show, and probably the most crazy and complex costumes of any production, because our backstage was insane, if you ever saw it. It was.
I did a couple of nights for you, and it was literally mad.
It was crazy, and there were multiple quick changes, and I was one of the leads and had sort of about 15 or 16 costume changes. So whenever you were off stage, in fact on stage was the most calm you'd be, because off stage was so stressful, because you'd always be quick changing. Even in the interval you'd be sort of doing new makeup and everything. But there were, obviously, with so much in terms of a quick paced show, costume changes, complex costumes, not to mention a massive bus that had to move. There were obviously going to be little errors or little mistakes that just had to be, because everything just had to run perfectly. So there were multiple things that happened that we solved, and now I just find hilarious. So one of my stories was mostly its costume. So one night, I think it was the second night, I remember singing my first song, and I remember thinking, I don't think my mic's working. And I glanced up at the sound guy, and I could sort of see him go, he waved his hands to sort of say, your mic isn't working. And I knew I couldn't get off stage for like a while. And I was sort of hoping that this backstage team would be sorting something, because there's not like I could linger around going, has anyone got a mic or anything? And the backstage team were incredible. So anyway, there was this certain point where I knew I had a really quick change, and I thought, I wonder if they've got a mic ready. Anyway, I go back, and they did. They had the wire. So I'm quick changing as they're trying to redo the wire. I have about 6 people around me, quick changing this costume. Anyway, it gets done. I literally run onto the stage for the first piece of dialogue. I sort of say my dialogue, turn around, walk backwards, and just stand there for a little bit whilst another bit's going on. And I knew I had a song coming up, and I sort of thought, something's uncomfortable. And I realised that because in the quick change, I was wearing like a black leotard thing, and then this thing over it. But in the way they'd done it, the wire had got caught under the costume and had hitched up this whole thing. So like my entire backside was literally out, right? And I was like, oh my God. And I thought, nobody's seen this yet, but in a minute I've got to dance. And I know the first move is me turning and walking to the back of the stage. And I thought, I can't do like my entire backside. And I literally went, okay, I've got 30 seconds. So I literally just ran off stage. And I literally ran. I remember running into the backstage team and going, "My ass is on show," and then literally sorting it out. And I ran back on stage as the first beats came in, and I ran into position and was there. But that was amusing. And then the other,
much more fun if people had seen your ass.
I know. They've gone home. Well, they did see something else though, because not that bit. So the other costume, the worst costume change, if you've ever seen Priscilla, is just at the end of Act 1, where the I Will Survive song starts. And we have to walk off stage, and over the first verse, we have to quick change into the most outrageous outfits, which have massive Gumby shoes, big headdresses, leotards, and they were a nightmare to change into. Like multiple times we didn't make it on stage in time, or one of us would be early and the other ones would be late, but we just had to carry on, and we'd sort of got into a bit of a rhythm. Anyway, this one night I was like, I've done it in time. I've actually got like a few seconds to spare. And I walked on all confidently, did the whole number with the like laughter and cheers. I was like, oh, they're loving it. We're really going for it. Only when I got off stage did I glance down and realise that the straps of my leotard were like stretched over my nipples. And my entire chest and nipples for the entire show were just there on display. I was like, no wonder they bloody loved it. Like they literally got a peep show going on. I was on complete display. But it was a show where you sort of go, you just have to be confident in what you're looking like and wearing, because there is no chance to be self-conscious in that sort of show. But afterwards, I mean, I found it hysterical because I don't get embarrassed easily by those sort of things, because I'm like, whatever, it's a good laugh. So I found it hilarious. And to be fair, so did everyone else. But so that's one of those mistakes that you sort of go, it makes for a great story.
There's one on Twitter that came in about a dog on stage, Ben. And I know you've worked with actual dogs in shows before. And they'd hired a theatre show dog. I didn't know you could hire theatre show dogs for their Year 6 production. I mean, big bucks over wherever this person's from. A show dog, and she says, show dog my arse, had to be dragged on stage every time, bribed with cheese to stay there, and dumped on the props.
Oh.
So the old adage about not working with animals, or although we've all worked with children and we know the children bit of it is not true, but certainly not working with animals might be one to stick to. Did you have a dog on with yobbos?
Yes, we've had 2. So when we did Legally Blonde, we had obviously Bruiser, who's Elle's dog, and then we have Paulette's dog. So Bruiser was played by our friend Alice's dog, who did very well. And actually, I then got to play Toto in my version of Wizard of Oz, which I did with my school. And bless her, like she's really just very calm, a little bit nervous, of course, but actually very calm and just got on with it. And then my dog at the time, who played Paulette's dog, was only on stage for a few seconds. But he was only like, I think at the time he was only like 1 year old. And he, I remember in like one of the final run throughs, he came out and he was walking along the little walkway that we had. And then he glanced over, saw me, and just jumped and got to me. I mean, it was only not a big jump, but jumped and ran to me, bless him. But I've not had any issues in that sense. What about you, Mandy?
No, we've done 4 shows at Bodycut with dogs, with animals, but dogs. So we did Annie, which we had Steph's golden retriever for, Jill. You'll remember Steph.
Yeah.
And we've done Oliver twice, so we've had a bulldog twice. I had to make up the bulldog once. I had the patch, so I had to put stage makeup on the bulldog. Yeah, absolutely. we've had two bullseyes and Wizard of Oz. We've had a Toto and Wizard of Oz. So yeah,
Very good.
4 times we've worked on that. They were incredible, and you know, at the end of the show, the animals are always going to get the biggest
yeah.
applause. Massive applause for the animals.
I will also say, with pets and having animals on stage, the amount of like paperwork and stuff that officially now especially has to go into it to make sure they're safe. They're better looked after than the cast. Like they have sort of a limited amount of things that they're allowed to do and can't do, and they have to have this access to these sort of, you know, this food and drink and stuff. You think, oh, that's better than most of the cast. They get their own dressing rooms.
Yeah, I'm imagining them now coming off and putting on a dressing gown and just kind of leaning back. Someone bring in my water.
Yes. Here's my rider.
No, and Mandy, you mustn't let the children ride the animals. No riders.
I hope not. Have you? I do have a story of when something goes wrong that I literally wanted to. Like most of my stories when things have gone wrong have been fun and you can cover them, and especially if it's in panto. Panto, it's great when things go wrong. They love it.
You almost want them to go wrong, don't you?
Yeah, and you sort of improvise around it and just have a good laugh with it. But one time that I remember being like, I want the world to swallow me right now, was I was directing We Will Rock You at school, and it was the first sort of one of the first big productions I'd ever sort of done, and everything had gone well. But the biggest challenge was the technical, because there was projections throughout the entire show, and they would run from 2 different projectors depending on which screen it was on. So there was multiple computers running a lot of memory in terms of videos. And then there was another computer which had some of the audio files, because sound effects and some of the songs and music was done by that. Anyway, I remember you both know Luke Wetherill, who is one of our ATC members and has helped at Bodicott Youth and stuff. He was playing the lead, and it was his birthday. It was his 16th birthday, and he has to sing on stage on his own, "I Want to Break Free." And you'll know that the music, obviously, "I Want to Break Free" just starts with a boom, "I want to break free." Anyway, the person, I was stood in the tech booth and have my technicians there, and they pressed the music to go for that song, and it didn't play. So he pressed it again. But what happened was there had just been a delay. So all of a sudden there was the boom, and Luke started singing, "I Want to Break Free," and all of a sudden it paused, because obviously he had hit it twice. And so he literally, you could see him just sort of glance, and he just carried on with that first verse. And I knew that all like the rest of like the videos and stuff relied on this track getting through entirely. So I waited for him to get to the end of the first verse, and I was like, "Play it again now." So he had to do the first verse like a cappella, and then he repeated it again with the music. And in the end, it was all fine. But I remember that 30 seconds that he was singing a cappella, and I remember feeling so sorry for him. It was his 16th birthday. His whole family was in, and I remember having a lanyard around my neck, and I remember just like literally doing this with it, and like almost strangling myself with it, because I was like, "This is awful," and I felt so bad for him. But that's one time where I've actually gone, that mistake is...
But hang on, Ben. Do you remember feeling totally sick when in Elf dress rehearsal, Alfie, who was playing Elf, fell off the stage, like Wickham stage, quite high, and he stepped backwards and there was nothing behind him, because we'd built it out a bit, hadn't we? And so it was that that extra bit in the front where there was no edge there, and he literally went backwards, like tumbled like a toy off a table. And I never felt so sick in all my life. He was in every scene. The whole show revolves around Elf, and we were just like,
how do you recast?
Yeah.
Oh, it was like just before the show, wasn't it, as well? Yeah. And he'd so much energy as always, and he'd gone for it, and then literally just went. And I remember being up, sort of sat in the seat and going, and just running down, being like, "Oh my God, what?" Firstly, obviously, has he injured himself or hurt himself? What are we going to do? I mean, he was like, "Yeah, I'm fine." Like, don't scare us like that ever again. Don't fall off the stage.
And then out came the extra tape. "I'm just marking the edge of the stage again." Even more marking up of the tape. Oh no, things like that though, yeah, they're terrifying. But I think in the long run, I know I've never had anything which have made me go, "Oh, that completely ruined the show." Like
you know, that everything has been.
Touch wood.
Yeah.
But it shows, doesn't it, how great, I think all these stories that we've told sort of so far show just how great not only the cast are, but the production team and the crew and everyone who works on these shows are, because you literally come together as a team. And I'm, again, thinking about that Priscilla story with the mic wire. I had so many people just there, and you sort of, especially as a director on stage, you start going, oh God, I hope someone's doing something. And when you come off, you go, I shouldn't have worried, because they will be, and they will be there completely with a plan in place. And it's why you completely have to rely on all those people who help you backstage, because they are, if you get the right people, which I think we always work with some of the best, if you get the right people, you don't have to worry, because they will be just in the same mindset as you and will get some stuff done for you.
Absolutely. And like we say, some of the very best memories are the memories of when it's not gone completely to plan.
Oh, completely. They make for the best stories, and as we said before, I think the audience, they do kind of love it, as long as it doesn't ruin the show and you don't get silly with it.
But Ben, Mandy, have not the Mischief Theatre Company made a whole living from it? The play that goes wrong.
That's why that's why the play that goes wrong and things like that is so good, isn't it? Because you just sort of go, especially for people like us, you sort of go, yes, maybe it's an extreme version, but I have seen that sort of thing happen. And what makes that funny is because the actors on stage aren't happy that things have gone wrong and are furious. That was make that funny. But actually, as long as you don't take yourself too seriously, especially with amateur theatre, then actually they can make for the best and funniest and most brilliant moments, can't they? I think we're going to have to do, Jill, whenever, we're going to have to do a part 2 to this episode.
I think we should.
Got loads more.
I was going to say, I think we could talk for hours about this, because like you said, I've got loads. Mandy, why don't you tell us one more story? Tell us one final one. I choose one with a current Bodicat and ATC member. So Will, we were playing Hairspray, and Will was on stage doing his duet. He was playing, I can't even remember the dad's name. The dad, brain's gone completely. Wilbur, thank you. He was playing Wilbur, and he was doing his duet, and in front of the curtains, so quite far forward on the stage, and I directed that show, and I was also prompt. We do multitask quite a lot at Bodicat. Yeah, we do have to multitask. So luckily I was in the front row. But he was halfway through his dance, and I noticed that his very expensive mic pack had managed to work its way down his trouser leg and come out of the bottom of his trouser leg and was dragging on the floor. And I'm like, what do I do? And he seemed oblivious and just carried on. So I managed to crawl across the floor, put my arm up, sort of signalled to him to stand still just for a minute, and I managed to tuck the mic pack into his sock, so at least it held it in place and wasn't sort of dragging across the stage noisily, and like with the thought that that very expensive mic pack might get ruined. So yeah, it was handily placed as a prompt to
very handy to poke your hand up a young fella's trouser leg.
I love the idea.
I
love the idea that, like, people who don't necessarily know you or the team or anything are just going, what is that audience member doing?
What's that woman doing on the floor?
She's obsessed with this performer. Why is she stroking his leg?
And nobody from the back could have seen. They wouldn't have seen the mic pack, because you can't, when you're behind at Bodycut, because we're not raked, you can only really see sort of from the knee up. So they'll have seen this weird woman crawling. They wouldn't have known that the mic pack was out.
But Mike, the mic man, would have been very thankful to you, Mandy.
Yes, indeed. Yeah.
Oh, mic packs, and clearly mic packs have caused all sorts of embarrassing issues in our stories there. But no, I mean, we'll definitely, I think, have a part 2 to this at some point in a few weeks, because there's so many great ones, and I hope, and maybe some people listening, I know that they have stories. More in, yeah. And now, you know, if you were embarrassed, hopefully this has put you at ease. I've just talked about my nipples being on show, so your stories will be fine. Hopefully, I mean, if they're more embarrassing than that, I definitely want to hear them. But but let us know if you have more, because we'll definitely do a catch up with this in a soon, won't we, Jill?
We will indeed. We will. And huge thanks to Mandy, longest serving leader in a drama group ever. I think you win the prize for. If we had prizes to give, we'd give you a prize, my love.
Please, can I have a medal next year when I've done 25 years?
Yes.
Just a small medal. You can make it out of tinfoil.
There you go.
Yeah.
Jill,
Got
for
one
those on the
hand.
podcast, Jill holds up an Oscar statue. There you go. That's
Thank you.
yours. I'll pick the thing off it that says Katie's name on it.
But no, thank you, Mandy, and thank you, people, long-running people who have been involved in stuff. It's so important to be able to keep that going and being able to pass things on and pass information on and how it works and everything. I know there's lots of people who have been running groups for such a long time, and it's so appreciated to be able to, keep these things going and to keep all that experience and that knowledge.
And we can't wait to see you live and have a proper dance and drink together, Mandy.
Oh, I know. Yes, it would be nice, wouldn't it? We're all in the same boat, though, aren't we? We're all putting up with it.
Yeah. Well, we'll have another kitchen disco around Easter, so we can have it. It won't be live, but we'll definitely have a good celebration then. But thank you everyone for listening in. Hopefully you've enjoyed some of these hilarious stories. Hope we haven't embarrassed you if you've been in our stories too much. But like I say, I think we embarrassed ourselves more. But do keep sharing those stories and join us next week for a new topic of the week and a new guest. Thank you very much, everyone. Bye-bye.
You have to dance now, Mandy.